to Impact Champions, the learning and development podcast where we talk about the impact that learning and development can have. Today, we're discussing one of our very favourite topics, xAPI. So today, we're joined by a very special guest, Julian Davis, who has a lot of experience working with xAPI and has even founded the xapi.com.au website in Australia. We'll talk more about that later, but I'd like to welcome Julian. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Andrew. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. As always, we're joined by David, my co-founder of ClearXP and xAPI aficionado. Hi, Dave.
Thank you. I'm also happy to be here.
Wonderful. So I really want to talk to you guys and hear from you guys today about xAPI. My background expertise isn't quite as in-depth with the xAPI technology. So perhaps from Julian first, would you mind just giving us a bit of an overview of what this is? Maybe we'll try and keep it within 5 minutes. So we could go.
Oh, wow. Talk about xAPI within 5 minutes. Oh.
I know. I'll have the timer on. I'll let you know when it's time to stop, but feel free, explain it to us. What's xAPI?
Okay, so xAPI is an open standard for capturing learning experiences. And one of the great things about it is that it is completely interoperable and open source. It's been around for quite a while now. And I think it was 2023, it became an IEEE standard. The concept behind xAPI, without getting into all the technical jargon, is it's based on the principles of someone did something. So that if you think about somebody watching a video, for example, in a learning environment, it will be John Smith watched a video. Now, how do we define what the video is? Well, there's unique identifiers to identify what the video is, meaning that we can start to capture a lot more information on that one particular object or activity. And then when we talk about watched, that's the verb side of it, so what they did, and that is defined as well by a unique identifier, which is basically a website address that gives you the definition of what that particular verb is. Because you can have a verb like run, which could mean run a bath or run a marathon or run code. There's multiple ways of what the word can mean. So by having the unique identifier, you're able to go in and see the context around what it is that the learning experience was all about. And that in itself is probably the most important. It's very, very extensible in the sense that it is written in a standard called JSON, without getting too technical again, but that allows for a defined structure that can be transported between multiple environments, and it's open and it's clear and it's so well documented. And believe it or not, it is human readable to me, probably to Dave as well, but not to a lot of other people. But it is human readable code that we can look at. So in a very high level, that's it. It has to be stored though. So xAPI has to be stored somewhere. And we store that in what's called a learning record store. And that's what stores the xAPI data, which you can then connect to and pull that information out, or push more information into it, or forward it on to another learning record store. But you have to have one of those, and you can go and build one yourself, but highly recommend you go and get one that already exists, because it's conforming to the specification as well.
Great. Wow. Okay. So Dave, in less than a minute, have you got anything you want to add to the question of what is xAPI?
Oh, well, I could probably just confirm that everything that Julian said is correct. But I should say, Andy didn't say this in the intros, but I was an early contributor to the xAPI spec.
Oh,
the most notable contribution of mine was adding an extra number to the version number. So it was 1.0, and then I came along, I was like, no, let's make that 1.0.0. Thanks, guys. I'm out.
That's been recognised as one of the most valuable contributions.
Yeah. I'll remember that every time I'm looking at the version now. When I'm looking at a statement, I'll be thinking of you, Dave. So that's good.
That's an extra character that I've forced everyone to type anytime they type the version number.
Yeah.
I think just to add to what Julian said, it's really important to mention why xAPI is important, especially in contrast to its predecessor with SCORM. And I think you touched on it, Julian. You said that it's completely extensible. You can basically capture any arbitrary interaction and you can add extra fields to it. In contrast to SCORM, where it was completely locked down and not extendable at all. You had a limited set of fields and they could only capture a finite amount of data. And so that was really kind of why xAPI was invented, to get over these limitations. And I think that you mentioned it again with the objects, you can track pretty much anything as opposed to just this one learning object.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So, Julian, we did mention that it's been around for a while, but do you remember when you first discovered it? I
do.
I remember Tin Can being mentioned, and we were very excited about the concept of Tin Can. Can you tell us about it? Where were you? What were you doing when you first discovered xAPI?
So it was probably around 2015, 2016, and I was working for a national RTO, and we had an incredible amount of distance students. And I started posing the question. So I was the e-learning technologist or e-learning manager at the time. And I started asking questions to the tutors and asking, do you know what your students are doing? They said, yes, they're submitting this and they're completing this and they're doing that. And I said, okay, how often do you meet with them? And they would say, oh, I tell them that I want to meet on a Wednesday night. I've gone, okay, all right, that's enough information. Let me start doing some digging to find out if we can actually get this type of information that's going to be valuable for you. So at the time we were using Moodle, and the analytics in Moodle, if you've ever worked in it, can be quite big. You know, their log table in the database can get massive, which is really, really slow. So we started looking at a third-party analytics tool that would plug into it. The name completely escapes me. And I was working with another developer, and we managed to align some of these analytics with Moodle as well. And while we were doing this thing, Tin Can API, popped up, and I started looking at it, going, "What is this? What is this magic?" And the more that I looked into it, the more I could see how much of what this was going to change the way I wanted to do. At that, so I was very focused on that particular task at the time. And the unfortunate thing was, before I had an opportunity to implement it, I'd left the organization through one reason or another, and but it stayed with me, and I just couldn't get enough of it. I wanted to learn more. It was Tin, and then it moved to xAPI. So it was around about that transition period that I came in. And I could see, purely because I was so used to dealing with proprietary learning data, that this all of a sudden opened up the world of what you could do with it. And so I really jumped on board, and I started going to the xAPI cohorts that used to run, albeit for us in Australia, it was midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning or something, and started doing a lot of reading and started connecting with a lot of people in the US predominantly, the likes of Megan Torres and Jason Haag and those kind of people, and started building relationships to find out what this thing can do. I took up a role at Boeing Defense, and they allowed me to play. And I'm going to put it that way because that's the best way that you can understand how this technology works. So they allowed me to play. So based on that, I was able to get a little enclave within the environment and set up Learning Locker at the time, because they said this is a no cost. So I had to go with open source solutions that were available. So looked at Moodle, looked at the Learning Record Store, looked at Learning Locker, and we got it implemented. So we've got a full end-to-end concept working. And that really started to open people's eyes as well as to what this could do. And we started thinking about concepts where, well, we own the software, so we can do a check to the Learning Record Store to see whether they've actually completed the new software course. If not, send them to the learning management system, do the course, that sends a statement back, then we can recheck. It's completely autonomous, and it's all open, all easy. So, and from there, it's just grown. So I can see, I just see so many applications for it. And so I really have a huge passion for it, particularly for those that know me. I don't shut up about it. So
it's certainly coming through very, very clearly, which we love. We're right on board with that. That's for sure.
Awesome.
Dave, what about you? I think I might have been there at the time when we discovered it, but can you recap? Can you remember? Can you go back in time and?
Yeah, I mean, it was born out of the frustration of developing learning modules, right, and not being able to build the types of modules that we wanted to be able to build. Like everyone was interested in gamification and leaderboards and things like that, and it just, without like hacky workarounds, like you basically had to go like non-compliant to deliver that kind of functionality prior to xAPI. So I think we were just, I don't know when it came across my plate, but obviously in the very early tin can draft form, I heard that it was being conceived, and that's when I jumped on the community to start seeing, well, how's this coming together, and contributing my feedback and giving some insight there. And as it was coming together, I was just like, yeah, this kind of solves our immediate needs in terms of being able to deliver better learning, more interesting learning, and provide insights back to customers. So basically just like, yeah, let's build a learning record store and let's just get on board.
Yeah, I remember when I first saw some statements coming through onto an LRS on our dashboard, and you guys mentioned it earlier about nerding out. I was nerding out to the max, seeing the verb, seeing the statement come through, and it was just like, this is amazing. It was live and in the moment, and it just felt like this is everything that I felt dynamic learning should be.
Yeah,
and seeing it happen in real time, and seeing it more than a person got a complete on a quiz, which was essentially what we were getting from SCORM previously, right?
Yeah.
So when we saw that a person had opened a certain page or gone into a certain activity or done a certain, had a certain experience, and seeing that flow through on the stream of data that you can come through with statements, for me, that was an illuminating experience, and I remember it vividly. Even to this day, I try and find that we've got a lot of data, but I like to find that stream into this day to see that a program's working properly.
Yeah,
I feel a sense of ease knowing that there is a stream of data coming through as statements, and the data streams coming through. You know that the program.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Yeah, it is pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that Julian mentioned that it sounded like Defence Boeing was sort of the first use of it, of successful use of the technology. And you've been using it for lots ever since. What kinds of things, how are you using it? How have you been using it since?
So in a range of things. So I've used it in VR. So we've been able to capture data from VR, which is really exciting. I've used it. I've built a product that allows you to do remote reviewing of products. So through tasks, you can capture that particular information of what that learner is doing outside of your LMS. I've been advocating for it a lot. That I have a few examples up to xapi.com.au, and one of the ones that I look at is the video, because it seems to me that most people seem to get a video if you are trying to explain what a video is and how it can work. So by having statements come through in real time of what they are doing in a video, all of a sudden you do get this eye-opening moment. So there's a lot of talk and a lot of demonstrations around what it can do. And particularly now, my last 12 months has been focusing on this decentralized learning environment and learning and assessment type environment while using xAPI, and challenging people that I meet of why do you send your data through emails? Why do you do that? So for starters, that's not real secure in my books. If you're just sending a spreadsheet of data, and then what are they going to do with it at the end? So yeah, other examples is obviously plugging it into Moodle. I worked with another organization that we captured around about 5 to 6 million statements in 2 weeks, which was huge, all the time around mandatory compliance training. And from that, I've learned some very valuable lessons around structuring your data and getting the data that you want, not necessarily what you think you need. So that's another important point when it comes to getting the right data for what you want. There is a lot of the ones I see a lot are around someone left something and someone experienced something. So you get the start and the end of when they've actually been on something. But when you've got 8 million of those, it starts to get pretty heavy. Yeah. So it does come down to making sure that you do get the data and structure the data the way you want to do it. So kind of having a data dictionary beforehand.
Yeah, I think the video one is such a good use case, right? Like I've found the same thing. It's just like, that's something that, firstly, a lot of learning content has video in it. And that's one of the things where people are just like, can we get video analytics? And it's just like, well, yeah, we've got xAPI in there. Of course we can. And so, and yeah, you're right. There's just like, it's an easy one to do because firstly, it's been very well defined from the beginning. Like, here's how we should capture statements to represent videos, playing, pausing, watching, that kind of thing. And then when you aggregate it, you can go, yeah, here's your drop-off graphs and things like that. And then people are like, yeah, I can actually see that's something that we couldn't get before, and it actually provides some real value. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Quizzes are the same. So SCORM, we know how limited the data is in SCORM. We've spoken about that earlier. And when we've been able to get xAPI data from quizzes and give them back to the SMEs and said, well, why are people getting this wrong all the time? Well, let's have a look at it. That question's not written well. It's ambiguous, or the answers don't really reflect. So from that, we were able to get that granular information and be able to then update the question accordingly. Whereas if you've just got that sitting in SCORM, you've got no idea.
Yeah. Question level granularity. That's something that because we use xAPI all the time now. It's just like we kind of take it for granted. We forget that we never had that before.
yeah, this is true. Yeah. This is true. It's just the flexibility. I can't get enough of how flexible it is. You need to add that. Well, then you just add it as an extension, and there's your value with a predefined value, predefined extension. You're good to go as long as it formats as per the specification, as per JSON requirements. It's going to work. It just works.
Absolutely. And I just want to touch on one other thing you mentioned right at the end there, defining your data dictionary and like knowing like when is too much data, or when is enough data enough, and when is it too much? Because we often get the question like, people get a taste for this. They see the video analytics and like, all right, well, like give me like that clickstream stuff of like every button they've clicked on the screen and like, everything the cursor is touched and that kind of thing. Like, do you have a view on that?
Too much. Like what's the benefit? Seriously, what is the benefit of that? If you want every click, every mouse hover, from a learning experience, if you want that, go and get Google Analytics, or go and get another type of analytics that's going to capture that type of, web-based, get your hotspots, all those kind of things. Look at what it is that you want from a learning experience. What is it that you are trying to get from your learner? And are you looking at getting the engagement data? Like how much of that do you really need to know where they hovered to get engagement data? I don't know whether that's meaningful or not, but it does come back to defining your data beforehand. And is that too much? And getting it past the stakeholders as well is because this is change, albeit been around for a decade plus. This is change, and people are very resistant to change. That is something that I have found in my exposure to xAPI over the last decade or so, is this resistance to change. And I've seen that flow through industry as well. And without mentioning any names of particular e-learning development tools, you can now embed xAPI into SCORM. Now, whilst that serves a purpose, it's a backward step for us in xAPI. It's an absolute backward step. And that some people will say, oh, well, that's a game changer because that brings everything in. Well, no, that's CMI5. You're not quite grasping what it is that needs to happen. I once did a presentation about a timeline of where xAPI was and when that became a standard and everything. And I've got a little one in here with a note going, this is where we went backwards, because this is where these tools we're integrating xAPI into SCORM, which completely defeats the purpose of why it was designed and developed in the first place.
Oh, yeah, that's my biggest gripe as well, is the authoring tools who have come out and they're like, we have xAPI support, published it as xAPI, and they collect pretty much the exact same amount of data as SCORM.
Yeah.
Now it's just tracked as xAPI. So There's literally zero benefit over switching that to xAPI publishing versus what it was before.
That's right. That's right. It's I've often said, and I've said this at the last conference that you and I, Andrew, were at, and I said in my presentation that you know what, you don't even need an LMS, and there was a collective sigh. It was like, what? No, we have to have an LMS. It's like, well, no, you don't. Give me an LMS that supports xAPI.
Yep.
Crickets. So, you know, there's not many out there that have adopted xAPI either. So that's another setback for us to try and get it out there and get it using for what it was designed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the biggest thing for me with the going back to the authoring tools is just that if they were to fully embrace xAPI and allow you to do the kinds of things that you want to do, like you'd have completely different publishing formats. Like you could be building task learning experiences that just we've never seen before. Like if they were to truly embrace xAPI from an authoring tool perspective, they would have an abundance of new interactions, and maybe you could produce, you know, VR content or Optus device content, and we just like haven't seen that like from like a tool perspective before.
No, we haven't. And also vendors with you've just made me think of something, Dave, which was simulations. So I've had a chat with a lot of guys, particularly in defense, around simulations that they do, and it's like, well, so your simulator is throwing out events of what someone's doing. Well, how do you know what they're doing? And is this going back to their global learning training record that they have in defense? And they're like, yeah, and it's got to do, and it's just, well, why don't you just push it out to a learning record store?
Yeah.
Tell me more. And the ADF has actually accepted IEEE xAPI as a standard now, so they are looking to start using it, which is a bit of a step forward. As long as they don't go down that SCORM xAPI rabbit hole, we'll be okay. So, but they can see the benefits of it now, and that TLA total learning architecture decentralized environment.
It's a good point though, with learning design being the thing that has stipulated in many ways that SCORM continues to be used, because organizational learning design still is that very modular level.
Yeah.
And a large scale embracing of a different approach to how you design your learning is needed to get the benefits of using xAPI. Because if you're still just thinking about it from a singular module or a couple of modules stitched together, that's still the static singular way of doing it. That's an easier and more achievable way of doing learning design.
Yep.
And it's not an easy task, but it is it's easier to achieve, it's easier to explain, it's easier to get stakeholder buy-in to do that. Opening it up to what the xAPI standard does it's much broader, and it just comes with a different value proposition and a different explanation to organizations. So what I'm hoping is going to happen would be there needs to be a bit of an influx of a technology that is transformational for most organizations that have no choice as to change it. And guess what's happening? There is currently going through a transformational shift in a technology, as we know.
Yeah.
So I feel like with AI coming in, although I will say that it's about AI, I have seen somewhere somebody talking about, they're very excited because they've seen a way that AI can be put into a SCORM module. I was just like,
oh dear. Okay.
So
one step forward, two steps back.
We're still going to cover that, but hopefully that when people see that because of a transformation in the environment and technology around us, that there is a better way or another way of approaching the attitude towards learning design and what organizational learning is, or education in general, vocational as well. And that will lead to then exploring what is possible with technology such as xAPI. I'm certainly hopeful of that, and we're seeing examples of it already happening too.
Yeah, it's coming. It's just slow. You
Yeah.
know, it's just the adoption has just been really slow. I mean, maybe my enthusiasm got the better of me when I first started learning about it. I just thought, this is revolutionary. This is going to change the world. This is awesome. And no one else got on board. No one else followed my enthusiasm. So that's, we'd hope so. I mean, you mentioned there, Andrew, about AI and xAPI, and they can work. They can work together. In an adaptive learning environment, I think is where you could use xAPI, is that if you are sending statements from multiple sources, multiple providers, whether that be through VR or through video or through simulation, you can start to create real adaptive learning based on the experiences that have been captured through xAPI. And because it is structured, and AI loves patterns and loves structure, it can work really, really well. As far as developing tools that support xAPI, yeah, it can do that. But again, you still have to, what do they call it now? Vibe coding, I think they call it. If you're just doing it on your own, you really do need to understand what it can do before you get into that realm. But I think from a reporting and an engagement and an adaptive learning, that's where AI and xAPI are a pretty good match.
Do you think it's AI is going to, or specifically within the context of xAPI, enhance more on the learner side, like changing learner experiences and the interactions they can have, or is it more supporting back-end analysis?
No, I think it's both. Yeah, I really do think it's both. I think that particularly when, and it does again come down to context of where and what type of training and learning you're delivering. It can be used from that adaptive learning if you're delivering a Certificate 2 course versus a Certificate 5 diploma course, that's completely different. So if you can capture that initially, you now know the language that you're going to use, and you can start to gauge through xAPI based on responses, even open text questions that go in, and you can capture that feedback back into xAPI. You can use that to change the learner experience along the way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's both. And the example you just provided at the end, like having an open text response from a learner, is something that we couldn't really do before. Like in terms, unless it's just like short answer, here are the discrete list of possible responses.
Yeah.
You now have AI take a longer answer and give you feedback on whether it's correct or not and where you should improve. But the best thing about xAPI is then you can capture that full interaction of like, here's what your learner said as the response, and here's how the AI evaluated it, and here's your rubric evaluation, and that's all contained within the standard data capture of xAPI.
Absolutely. And it's interoperable in that sense too, in the sense that if you're a large learning organization and you can have several different LRSs, and they can, I think I've heard the term noisy LRS before as well, is your data scientists or data analytics or anyone who's doing that can connect to this in real time through a very, very simple interface to be able to start analyzing that data as well. So managers will get, any training managers or up to the E's and C's, they're going to get that information very, very quickly through xAPI reporting or through some sort of other BI type tool that they can use. So yeah, the flexibility there. And if you want a new one, you just add a new one. You just add a new LRS, add a new activity, and it'll all just work because it is a standard. It is a spec. It is a standard.
Do you see a lot of that, of distributed LRSs and then aggregating that data together across?
I haven't seen it myself. I've heard of it, and I do know that that's one of the paths that the ADF are going down, is they're having a couple of noisy LRSs, and then they would have they're either using the LRS itself or using some sort of pipe to filter the results and then forward them onto another particular LRS or something like that. So I know people are looking at it and thinking about it, but I've not actually seen it myself. But I can't see why it can't work when you visually look at it. There's no reason it can't work. And particularly if you're going to filter the statement so you know what the object is and you know what the verb is that you're looking for, then you can just get that specific data. If this part of the organization just wants to see completions. Well, yep, we can give you that. But if this part just wants to see the engagement side of it, well, then you can give them that. So you can really start to, customize who gets what, really.
Nice. I think I'll interject here and ask another question.
Go on for help.
It's brilliant, guys. Great conversation. We will run out of time. So I'm interested, the topic or the title of this podcast is Impact Champions. So we always like to bring it back to potential impact and what moves the needle in learning and development, and what are things that you can do that are actually going to make a tangible difference, what's going to make a change, what's going to be something that can start to identify when something's working. So either an actual example or conceptually what xAPI are capable of to start delivering and showing tangible impacts or impacts of learning.
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of touched on one a little bit earlier with the idea that we came up with Boeing, which was that autonomous loop of they own the software, they can check the learning record store if they've completed a course or not. If not, send them off to the course to do it. So that there's that particular scenario. The decentralized approach. So in the trade and logistics and those real hands-on type jobs, VR is becoming more and more popular in how they can do things, or fire extinguisher training, or those kind of things that allow you to do it in a safer environment. Generally, they're not connected to any type of learning management system. They're completely separate. So how does the and also the VR experience might be owned by somebody else and they're outsourcing that training. So how are those the original organization going to be able to capture that completion data and certificates, for example, as well? All those kind of, how are they going to get that? Well, traditionally, you might, the VR company might pull together a Word document every month and then come out with the certificates and manually email them. And that can be quite a laborious task, as opposed to, well, we'll just give you the xAPI and you can do with it what you want. So, you can then connect that with your other tools that you have. So starting to decentralize that and bringing it all together into one central location, that really expands the learning and really expands the assessment of what a learner can actually do now. So on the job training, it can be videoed and then assessed. How would you do that before? You might video, upload, someone's got to look at it, do a manual report on it. All that can be captured in xAPI, and it's all accessible and all there straight away to start using it. So it unlocks the walls of the LMS, the garden walls of the LMS. Is people are too stuck in their way to do that. So this really does open that. And if you were to pose the question of how do people learn? Do they learn by doing an online course? Not really. What if they're visiting websites and you want to track those websites, or YouTube clips or anything like that? You can start to really get an idea of what your learner's doing. And then, if need be, provide more resources for them. If you find someone struggling on something that they may not be open to admitting that they are, but the data's not going to lie, you're going to be able to see that they're doing that. Again, that's outside of what might be outside of the LMS or outside of their traditional learning environment. Let's call it that. So heaps of examples. Dave, you've probably got more examples. So they're just a couple off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think it goes to to apply an L&D methodology viewpoint to it is your standard quiz is just testing knowledge recall basically, which is just Bloom's level 1. It's not actually demonstrating the ability to apply those skills. Whereas we can now start to test those things with simulations. Simulations are fantastic to demonstrate the skills, or even the in-person one, like the fire extinguisher training or VR training, where you're actually putting those skills into actions and practice and then collecting, evaluating them and bringing them back so you can show that there's been a higher level of knowledge and basically skills demonstration that we didn't have before.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, it's really just enabling higher levels of learning.
That's right. Yeah. And it is getting people to think differently. Think differently. yeah, that's probably the best way I can put it. Is people need to think a little bit differently about how to do something. Even if it's a PDF, if they want to capture a form data from a PDF, you can do that. You can do that. So yeah, it's pretty powerful. It's very powerful.
Impact's a very subjective thing for organisations, so it means different things to different people. So when you're talking about thinking differently about it, it's organisations should be encouraged to think about what they are wanting to achieve and not be limited by what the LMS is letting you achieve.
That's good. Yeah.
What are you wanting to achieve? What is the thing that you are wanting to see? So simulations being so good because we want to have evidence that people can perform their job safely, and it's not evidenced by the fact they've got a complete record on an LMS. It's evidenced by we can see based upon this data that we have that this person has shown that they can perform their role effectively, safely. That for me is something that is impactful beyond what we're already doing, because it is just evidence and assurance that that's what's happening, not something that is dumbed down and scaled back and put into a evidence by a certain tick. So that's one of the many things that I feel is really exciting about it all as well.
And then you can take that one step further as well, right? And actually pull in job performance data. This is the holy grail of xAPI right from the very beginning. This was it. Correlate your learning data with on the job performance data and show the direct correlation impact, which is, from my experience, it can be done, but it's a little bit trickier just to get access to that data. A lot of business functions are just they're very protective. They're we don't want to give you our sales data or our workplace incident data. But if you did do it, that's kind of the next level of impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's just what is it, thinking about it from a perspective of what do you want to see, not what your technology is letting you see. Is a mind shift that hopefully we'll see. Okay, so we've got to wrap this up fairly soon. We've covered some of your thoughts about the adoption of xAPI.
Yeah.
Is there anything you wanted to add to that? We talked about authoring tools. We talked about the mindset of learning design. It hasn't been universally widely adopted. We're all aware of that.
Yep.
Which none of us are all happy about. But it's got unlimited potential and it's not going away. I think that's another really important factor.
It's not going away, and it's only getting bigger.
Yeah,
just probably not as quickly as what we would have originally thought it was going to be. It's interesting. They hear the word API, and I think they have a different interpretation of what that is. Everyone, from a technical perspective, we know what it is, and xAPI does fall into that category, but they just hear API. They don't hear the X. So I think there's a little bit of fear that, we're going to need software engineers and developers to set this up, and we've got to connect to the API, and we've got to secure it, and we've got to do this. So there's a real lack of awareness and lack of understanding of really conceptually how simple an integration can be, and the return on investment that you're going to get from getting that learning data out of it, that learning analytics out, is huge.
Yeah,
it's huge.
Yeah, completely agree. It isn't the sexiest name, let's face it. Maybe they should have kept it being Can.
Maybe, to me it is, but again, I'm a nerd.
But you're right. API does come with nervousness for organisations. As soon as if you're having a conversation with an organisation, as soon as it, and particularly if you like you're probably the same, you're discussing things with the HR, L&D area first, and as soon as the word API comes up, then there's nervousness because they realise that means there's inevitably going to be a conversation with IT as well.
Yes,
and we love IT. IT are some of our favourite people, but it isn't always easy to get things happening in an IT with an IT department. So even though we know that it is a separate thing, it doesn't xAPI does not rely on an API integration at all. It's a very separate thing, but that's the perception out there. And I guess that's what we're going to talk about next, is that the future is we're going to spread the message about xAPI even further.
We are looking to set up a community of practice for xAPI next year. So planning is well underway to kick that off. And something that I've seen over time, with the exception of the awareness of it, a lot of what happens outside of Australia. So we talk about groups and cohorts and training and webinars and large events that will focus on this kind of technology are all outside of Australia. So it makes it real difficult for people to get out there. So by bringing it back to Australia and focusing on Australia, but still getting some of those, the big hitters and the key people from the US and from Europe to show an interest in this as well, we can show that it can be used, and we've got bigger use cases out there. So by kicking off this community of practice, we can really start to raise awareness of what it can do, focusing on real life case studies that have happened and the changes that have been applied, introducing people to conceptually what it is, and try and dismiss some of those perceptions that you were talking about of it being difficult. So yeah, that's in the planning, and I'm really excited about that. Really excited about that.
Us too.
Yeah, working together. It's going to be great. It's going to be really good.
Okay, we might leave it there, folks. It was an excellent conversation, and we'll continue these conversations well into the future. So thanks very much for joining us, Julian. Great.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks as always, Dave. Folks, for more content like this and others, be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.